And Sir John Hayes, it is a pleasure to have you here on Uncancelled tonight. So,
great to be here, Dan.
Great to have you. This is the battle of our times. The culture war is serious. This isn't just a preoccupation amongst certain groups in the media.
Absolutely. And the pollster, Frank Lunt, you'll remember this, a couple of weeks ago, who's done so much work in the US, has now polled in Britain and found that a huge number of people see this as the defining battle, more important than the difference between the North and the South, between men and women, between the old and the young, between rural areas and urban areas. People see this culture war, this struggle for values, as the key divider in both politics and society. So I'm not alone in this. That's what the American pollster found. And I think it reinforces my fundamental argument that politics is about values. Actually, it always has been, but sometimes politicians have been too timid to admit it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right. So what can we do?
Well, counter all of the nonsense that we hear coming out from the liberal bourgeoisie that I described. So I was listening to your programme a few moments ago about carry-on films. The carry-on films are now going to be censored in some way. Now, this is a nonsense. You know, programmes like Dad's Army are now regarded as unacceptable by these people because they have such an extreme view about what's permissible and what's offensive. Common sense, the vast majority of people's view, suggests that that is absolute nonsense, and we need to say so at every turn and every opportunity. So all I'm doing is really articulating the views of the overwhelming majority of my constituents and the people I meet going about my daily life. They see this woke war against what we believe is right and sensible and good as a nonsense, and so do I, and I'm not afraid to say so.
I think you're right, and this is obviously something I try and do on this show every night, actually have a discussion about these issues, because actually you won't hear a lot about it in the rest of the media. And I know you've recently spoken about the fact, and this is just one small example, but it's an important one. If you look at the BBC, June Sarpong, she used to be a TV presenter and a decent TV presenter. She's now taking home £267,000 a year for working a 3-day week at the BBC as their so-called diversity champion. I mean, that's more than the Prime Minister is paid. And are we just meant to accept this as part of the woke orthodoxy?
Well, the problem is that the example you give is a very good one. A lot of these people are funded by taxpayers. So if you look at some of the museums, some of the galleries, some of the arts organisations, some of the charities that receive large amounts of government money and grants, they're the people who are leading this assault on our values, and they're doing it with our money, with taxpayer funds. BBC is a great example of that. Licence fees being used to fund all kinds of preoccupations of the people who run the BBC, rather than the preferences of the people who watch and listen to it. So I watch the BBC, I listen to the BBC, as well as your channel, I hasten to add. And you know, I don't want to be told what to think about things which, frankly, were regarded as, by my parents' generation, but also by the vast majority of people now, as perfectly acceptable and normal. To make a slightly more, well, I hope it's a profound point. I was going to say it's a more profound point. It's for you to judge, Dan. We live in an age which is curiously both more purient and more puritanical. So we're puritanical about carry-on films and seaside postcards. We're purient in terms of the language which now prevails on television, the images that we're allowed to see, the kind of sexualization of young children, which we see in our culture in all kinds of different ways. All of these things are a sign of kind of purience, while simultaneously we're getting excited about carry-on films and 40 Towers and Dad's Army and claiming, or at least the woke elite are claiming, that they're not acceptable. What a curious paradox that is.
Yeah, no, indeed. And it's crossing into so many areas of life, you know, the national Trust, that the former boss of the National Trust, Tim Parker, blacklisted almost 100 properties because of links to slavery, including the homes of Sir William Churchill and William Wordsworth. Then you have the National Education Union, that's the biggest teaching union in the country, warning that Britain is shaped by colonisation and neoliberalism. So this is everywhere, because you can certainly say that a teachers' union is probably an organisation on the left, but you certainly couldn't say that, I don't believe, about the National Trust, could you?
Well, I'm a member of the National Trust, and you may be too, Dan. But people join the National Trust because they want to visit historic houses. They believe that the National Trust's purpose is to preserve and promote our history. And the last thing they want is the National Trust lecturing on them on the colonial countryside, as they called this awful report. They spent immense amounts of money, of members like me and like lots of others like me, perfectly ordinary National Trust members, commissioning a report which, as you said, linked historic homes to slavery, including Chartwell, Winston Churchill's home, in an extraordinary way. And they commissioned this work from an academic who recently wrote a book called Green and Unpleasant Land. So appalled is she by the characteristics of our country, its history, its nature, all of the icons and symbols that represent Britishness, which I'm deeply proud of, and I know many of the people watching this program will be. So look, these organisations need to be told they don't represent their members, they don't represent the public, they don't have a right to spend money in this irresponsible way, and they're going to be called to order when they do. So I've been campaigning with government ministers to say grants should be suspended, money should be withdrawn. We should end this business of funding woke extremes on the taxpayer.